welcome back to Brickcats. Today I'm reviewing Edge of Bricks' TIE Interceptor. As always, please consider leaving a like, subscribing to the channel, leaving a comment, or supporting what I do in any other way you see fit. I greatly appreciate it. The TIE Interceptor is faster and more heavily armed than the standard TIE Fighter, and while it made its first canon appearance in Return of the Jedi, the Interceptor was in service prior to the events of A New Hope and appeared in the Rebels TV series. Most recently, TIE Interceptors appeared in the Mandalore system, attacking Bo-Katan Kryze and Din Djarin on Kalevala. Running the vanilla parts list through Bricklink gave me 3 stores and $115 without shipping and tax, or about $139 with shipping and tax. Ultimately, I was able to get this down to just about $100, with the potential for even more savings. In my reviews, I offer my opinions on aesthetics and model features, parts issues you might want to look out for, the build experience, the model's integrity, and I close out with my overall impression and pricing information in the conclusion. I assume you've bought the instructions or are interested in buying them. I also assume a basic level of familiarity with Bricklink's ordering system and LEGO nomenclature. I only use genuine LEGO bricks and I always purchase the instructions. I create these reviews for my own personal enjoyment and in the hopes that my advice will make your experience more enjoyable and or less expensive. Edge of Bricks' TIE Interceptor measures about 9 inches front to back, about 7.5 inches wide, and 5.75 inches tall off the stand. On the stand, depending on the angle you have it displayed, the model tops out at just under 6 inches. The cockpit eyeball is a combination of slopes and snot, and it makes great use of the 3x3x1 round corner bricks you can see outlining the dish here. On the top, Edge of Bricks has used the 6x6 printed dish with the bar. I happen to have the printed version, but the unprinted one works perfectly fine. Using slopes and snot means a lot of interior space for the cockpit, and I really like this cockpit because it has the seat, the control yoke, and it doesn't overdo it on other details that add cost and complexity for an area you're likely never going to see. You kind of see a TIE pilot in there. He sits pretty comfortably. I'm finding a little tricky to get out. Here is the control yoke, and it's got the red targeting screen there. This would be easier, I think, if I wasn't behind the phone I'm using to record this video. But you can see the seat in there, and there's lots of room with some trans red detailing as well. The 2 chin cannons look good to me, and turning the ship over to the bottom reveals some very nice shaping to get a reasonably smooth surface on the bottom of the fighter as well. These anti-studs form the connection point for the display stand, so they do serve a functional purpose. On the back of the Interceptor, the twin ion engines are inset into another set of the round corner bricks, and the designer has represented the cone-shaped rear of the fighter with what I guess I'll call the repeating slope method. And Edge of Bricks uses this a lot, for example, the engine nacelles on his Mandalorian N1, and I thought this implementation was particularly clever just because it uses a connection I definitely wasn't expecting. I was also pleased at how well this section fit inside the 3x3x1 corner bricks, so major props to Edge of Bricks for the for the section back here. And if you look at it in kind of profile, you can see that the shape is just about right. The support struts to either side of the cockpit have some simple but effective detailing. One thing I think could be better is this 2x2 curved slope right here, as this is definitely supposed to be more of a ridge than a slope shape. This is simple enough to change yourself if you really want to, and ultimately doesn't detract from the overall look of the model. But I am a bit curious about this choice of piece, as the designer used a 2x1 curved slope on his TIE Fighter a few years back, which I think is more accurate for that particular area. You can see from the front view that the wings are angled just about perfectly as far as I can tell, and they're held in place from collapsing inwards by these cheese slopes along the top and bottom edges right here. As you can see, the designer has gone with plate construction for the wings, which is generally a sturdier method, and I really like the gray outline along the edge here, but I would have liked to see something along the inner edge as well. In addition, there's no gray section along the trailing edge of this square piece here, which would have been nice to see. The solar array shape is represented well with black wedges and tiles, and that's replicated on both the outer and the inner surfaces of the wings. On this rear section right here, all the photos I can find seem to indicate that this gray portion extends all the way back to the end of the wing, so you could replace this 1x2 black plate with a light bluish gray one to fill out that section. I also found this two-stud section at the tip of each wing a little distracting, so I think a 1x1 round quarter tile in black could help fill out the shape, or even a simple 1x1 plate in black, with another 1x1 plate on the inside right here. I put them on one side and left them off the other for comparison purposes, so let me know in the comments which one you think is better. The targeting sensors are represented very nicely inside the wing gap, and the 4 wingtip cannons would be most accurate placed inside the wings, along kind of this surface right here. This would certainly add a little bit of complexity and make them a little less stable, so I'm okay with this implementation and it looks just fine. I really like these 2x1 curved slopes right here and here, multiplied by all 4 angled sections that represent the small band wrapping around the wings. And the shaping in this section here surrounding the printed tile is excellent. However, it is a little inaccurate as the gray section is not supposed to be covering the solar array here. But unfortunately, changing this to move everything forward would throw the printed tile, out of alignment with the rest of the gray section on the wing, and that would definitely not look as good. The display stand is included with the instructions and parts list, and it looks very good, and it's also quite simple. The fighter can sit mostly flat, or you can angle it upwards. I'll show you this. The top part where the fighter rests on moves pretty easily. The upwards angle is a little too steep for me, actually, so let me put this on here. So here is the fighter mostly flat, and it does tip back like this. And this angle is just a little too steep for me, but you can adjust it downwards and it generally stays in place. Overall, Bricks TIE Interceptor is an excellent looking model. The few minor inaccuracies are easy to change if you want to, while the major ones really aren't worth the level of effort, and perhaps they can be changed if the designer revisits the model sometime in the future. The Interceptor looks great on its stand, and this is a worthy candidate if you're looking to add an Interceptor mock to your collection. Bricks' TIE Interceptor and the stand requires 136 elements and 853 pieces. It might be nice to include the stand separately, but I believe including the stand pieces with the rest of the model is appropriate, as it doesn't add much cost, and the model definitely looks better on the stand in my opinion. Bricks notes in the details section of the model's Rubricable page that you can swap out the printed top dish, part 18675 PB01, for the plain version, part 18675 in light bluish gray. If you've got the printed dish from Vader's TIE Advance vs. A-Wing or from a previous TIE mock, then it looks great, but the plain dish isn't bad by any means. You could also consider seeking out the cheapest printed dish available and adding a store, as a lot of times the algorithm will favor more elements per store as opposed to minimizing shipping costs. The printed dish is actually the only substitution I'm recommending for this model, as it brings the price down significantly. And aside from the top dish, the model is reasonably economical. Bricks typically does a great job marking pieces that are hidden in some off color, so we know, and this model is no exception. The few pieces that can be hidden are marked in plain red in the parts list, and I didn't find any other obvious candidates for color substitution. The cockpit windscreen specified is part 18675 PB02, which is the newer print that came with the 2021 TIE Fighter. The older print, part 18675 PB09, works equally well if you have it already. The model calls for 44 tile inverted 2x2 in black, part 11203. These are typically not too expensive on Bricklink these days, but they are cheaper in general directly from LEGO. And for the very budget conscious, you can substitute 2x2 plates in black, part 3022. I think the inverted tiles look good, and I'm recommending buyers get the majority of their pieces from Pick-a-Brick anyways. So if you've got an existing inventory, you could swap these out piecemeal, but you'll want to do it in multiples of 4, so each section of the wing mirrors the opposite side. So again, for illustration purposes, if you've got 4 2x2 plates, you want to switch out this one here, and then the corresponding one on all 4 wings, just so it looks symmetrical. And this is the same for the 12 2x2 inverted tiles in light bluish gray, and the 2x2 plate in light bluish gray for the insides here. And speaking of Pick-a-Brick, while the model doesn't make use of any rare elements, there are definitely a couple of newer elements that are less expensive directly from LEGO. So if you're going the Pick-a-Brick route, I highly recommend buying enough to meet the thresholds to eliminate the handling charges, which is $14 for either bestseller or standard items, and free shipping, which is $35 total to maximize your savings. In early April 2023, all but 4 elements were available on Pick-a-Brick, but at a minimum you should consider the following elements. The TIE Interceptor instructions consist of 114 steps, with each part or subassembly you add in each step outlined in red on a gray background. The ship itself takes up the first 100 steps, while the stand follows immediately after for the last 14. The instructions are generally very good, and I didn't have any viewing angle or perspective problems. In each step you're typically only adding a few pieces, and the build goes at a nice pace. In total, without any pre-sorting, the build took me about 2.5 hours. There were only 2 issues I ran into during the build. The first was when constructing the wing supports, mostly because there are small subassemblies that float, meaning they are not connected to the rest of the main subassembly for several steps. And this is an issue because this particular subassembly that runs through the core of the wing supports here, it's not flat, and it doesn't sit nicely on a flat surface, so I constantly had little subassemblies falling off until I connected them a couple of steps later. It's not a big deal to look ahead and make the necessary connections slightly out of order, but for first-time builders I think this could be a little bit frustrating. And the second issue was the rear section that fills out the back of the fighter. I think most builders' first reaction would be to attach the clips in the center of the thick section of the modified circular plate. So if you're familiar with this piece, you know that it's got some grooves. I have a better picture up that I'll show. However, you have to get 2 of the clips in each of the thick parts of this modified plate. And I think this probably merits some kind of note or actual photo in case builders get to this step and are initially a little puzzled. Or it could be totally me, and this was completely obvious. So this model I think is suitable for nearly all levels of builders, and I think the rear section is probably the only place where someone with minimal experience could get hung up momentarily. Overall, this is a very sturdy model, and the wing connections use both clips as well as studs on brackets specifically. So the model is very swooshable, and it's legitimately difficult to get these wings off, even when you're trying to get them off. And I only mean that as a good thing. And so this thing will stand up to pretty much any level of swooshing that you can throw at it. These angled sections do angle up, but not down further than that because of the cheese slopes here. And that is the same for the bottom section. The wingtip cannons can pop off easily, but this is not a surprise to anyone. They also go back on quite easily. The most fragile part of the model is definitely that rear section between the engines here. If your hand bumps this even just a little bit, it can come off. But again, easy to put back on, and you just have to be a little bit careful. There is plenty of solid area to grab onto with your hand underneath and your thumb on top. Putting your thumb on the top dish is a little bit loose just because this is only a single clip connection, so there is some room to have this move from side to side. Maybe you can see it shifting just a little bit. I've also found that when setting the model down off the stand, the model doesn't sit flat, so it does tilt forward. And these little sub-assemblies right near the wing gap, I'll show you. So it's this one here, and then this one at the bottom tend to come off quite frequently. This one at the bottom, I think it's mostly due to the hollow stud connection on the inverted tile. It just doesn't have a lot of clutch. And then this one here kind of gets just pried off in the process of these wings moving around if they move too much. So they're pretty easy to put back on. Can be a little bit annoying if you're trying to move this around or if you're putting it in a box to transport it or something, but not a huge deal. I think you could fix at least the bottom one by swapping out these 3 2x2 inverted tiles with plates which have hollow studs and thus a little bit more clutch strength, or you could probably just substitute in a 2x6 plate to cover all 3 of those. And while I do like the stand, unfortunately this is my biggest problem with this model in terms of overall stability. So while you can adjust the stand and the angle, there's nothing to lock this in place. So you can see this is just kind of moving freely. And the Technic section with the half pins, the way this is constructed, each one of these sections can also move slightly. So this makes it actually really annoying to get this model onto the stand, just because like you can see how far off of flat these are right here. So imagine having your TIE Interceptor in one hand and the stand in the other, and it's really just hard to adjust. So you kind of gotta straighten these out before you try and put it on. And then hope you have it aligned. And the bad part about this is that you really do need all 4 of the studs to connect to have this, to minimize the risk of this thing falling off. Okay, so I just got it there. That was like record time for me, especially while I'm filming. You really do need all 4 pins to connect to minimize the chances of the model falling off. And if you don't have all 4 pins connected, the danger in terms of stability here, it's like if you have the interceptor sitting flat, for example, keeping in mind that you can't really lock the angle, it's just kind of free to rotate up and down, and suddenly someone bumps your table or your bookcase or shelf or whatever, and this flops backward like that. You can see it kind of wobble, but if you don't have all 4 studs connected, this can actually fall backwards. And while the model is sturdy enough that it's not going to break into a million pieces, things are definitely going to fall off, and it's just kind of annoying. So I think I would really like if the stand would have the ability to either lock the angle or maybe not be as steep. But the main thing is that it would be really good if somehow this could be modified. And see, even with the Technic pins, sometimes the bottom plate comes off. So I just think that this could use a bit of a rework such that you aren't adjusting all 4 of these pins independently. Some kind of flat plate or something would be good, just to make it a little easier to get on and off. I've built a couple of TIE Interceptor models now, and in my opinion, Edge of Bricks' rendition is a worthy addition to the current offerings. It looks good and it displays well, it has high quality instructions, and is very sturdy. It has a few minor faults that are mostly personal taste, but I do find the stand connection a bit lacking. However, to make up for all of that, or all of the negatives, real or perceived, this is also a very economical model to build. With no substitutions, like I said, I got 3 stores and $115 without shipping and tax, or about $139 with shipping and tax. Just swapping out that top dish piece, the Bricklink total went to 3 stores and $100 without shipping and tax, or about $124 with shipping and tax. By using Pick-a-Brick with no substitutions, my Pick-a-Brick total was $89, which qualified for free shipping and free handling. This does include the tax, however. Bricklink was 1 store and $23 without shipping and tax, and that was about $30 with shipping and tax for a grand total of $119. And then utilizing Pick-a-Brick with the top dish substitution, my Pick-a-Brick total was again $89 with free shipping and handling, but including tax. And the remaining elements, I think there were 4 of them, I got from one Bricklink store, totaling $5 without shipping and tax, or about $11 with shipping and tax. And that brought the grand total down to $100 or so. And note that I do think you could do better by removing certain elements from Pick-a-Brick that are generally pretty cheap on Bricklink. The 1x2 plates come to mind. And my guess is that the final cost could go as low as $90 or so, depending on how much you want to optimize. Instructions for this model cost €8.99 or about $9.81 at current exchange rates. There will be a link in the description to the Rebrickable page where you can buy them if you so choose, as well as a link to the designer's YouTube video for the model. Thanks as always for watching my review of Bricks TIE Interceptor. If you built the model, you have something to share that I left out, or have a question about something I didn't cover, please leave them below in the comments. Remember to leave the video a like, subscribe to the channel, or follow me on Instagram if you haven't already, and I hope to see you back next time.